With me, Security Plus, Exam Prep. We're in Domain 3 still. Architecture and Design. Let's move to Subdomain 3.3. Given a scenario, implement secure systems design. So we're currently looking at hardware and firmware security, of which we have full disk encryption and self-encrypting drives. So data is encrypted as it is written and decrypted as it is read. I believe that's usually hardware, but there's a potential to use software. Hardware is faster. TPM, Trusted Platform Module, in accordance with ISO IEC 11889. So ISO stands for International Organization for Standardization. Almost looks like the spelling's off, but it's French translated to English. A TPM chip is located on the motherboard, which is HSM. Provides a random number generator, can generate cryptographic keys, provide remote attestation. Doesn't that happen in court? Binding and sealing. Binding and sealing. That might be something to look up, the difference between binding and sealing. Not going to be on the test. HSM, Hardware Security Module. Similar to TPM, however, it's usually plugged into a computer, so it's an external device, whereas again, TPM chips are built into the motherboard. So the problem with these three-letter acronyms is after a while they all look the same: FDE, TPM, HSM. So whenever you see the acronyms, use some flashcards, write down some notes, find something unique about it that jogs the memory. So TPM, Trusted Platform Module, that makes sense. So what's the difference between HSM? So platform. So it's built into the platform. A motherboard could look like a platform. Could you stand on a motherboard? I don't know. HSM, Hardware Security Modular. You can click it in. So how do you memorize if it's on the motherboard or if it's a module that can be clicked in? Don't think you really need to know these in depth, but you need to know the slight differences there. Given scenario, implement secure systems design. So UEFI BIOS came first. UEFI is replacing BIOS. And I'm wondering, UEFI, Universal, Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. Specification for software program that connects a computer's firmware to its operating system. Operating system is usually loaded in a teeny bit later, right? You need something to boot up and say, okay, where do I look for my next piece of information? Something that maybe checks the RAM, that kicks off some video, connects the keyboard, right? So gets things up and running. I believe UEFI can be fairly easily changed. So I wonder if that's EEPROM. Anyway, everything's going with the UEFI, so it's better, stronger, faster. 70s reference. Secure boot and attestation. There we get that attestation again. Two different mechanisms for verifying the authenticity of one or more software components. So is this legit? So secure boot verifies before running. Secure boot. I wonder if it uses MD5 checksums. Attestation verifies that the software already running is legit. I wonder if that's because the bad guys have found ways to get things running and then do evilness, and then we want to make sure that it hasn't been modified even if it's already running. Supply chain security combines supply chain management security requirements. That's kind of like a generic. So supply chain. So in the US and the Five Eyes countries, we're a bit concerned. We wouldn't buy any products, motherboards, or chips from North Korea, and these days China either, right? That would compromise our supply chain. So we're really concerned about China providing pieces of a 5G network. What if they sneak some bugs in there? Anybody remember the story from the 80s? This was, we were building an embassy in, let's say, Moscow. And we were told, well, hey, you got to use Moscow workers. You have to use Russian workers. Oh, that seems fair, Throw some money their way. Anyway, they're GRU, KGB. And we got involved with that, and they put little micro bugs inside the concrete and the pillars and just everywhere. And the building pretty much, at least a couple of floors had to be torn down because there was no way to clean out all the bugs. So we didn't have a solid supply chain. So the concrete manufacturers were putting, bugs in there as per instructions and orders. So compromised supply chain. I believe there's a couple of bucks involved with, taking away the top 2 floors and replacing them. Wonder who paid for that. Hardware root of trust, hardware based. Contains cryptographic keys and enables a secure boot process. I believe that has something to do with secure CPU. So hardware root of trust. Something to dig into while you're making flashcards and looking. All right, 2 clicks. EMI, EMP, EMI, electromagnetic interference. So if you have anything to do with networking and you have to string some cable, we know not to run cable over fluorescent lights because they kick out what? EMI, right? They kick out radiation which can induce a current in copper wire. Yeah. Electromagnetic pulse, looking at the overall negative effects of atomic weapons. So a cloudburst atomic weapon can take out, satellites, transmission, GPS, right? So there's a thought that some attacks might be preceded by an EMP. So we're highly dependent on GPS. Looks like I got a exam guide link I found was interesting. Okay, we'll come back later for operating systems. Let's see how well this tape went. Okay.